Imagine plugging your car into your house instead of the other way around, and watching your electricity bill drop by hundreds of dollars while your neighbors have no idea how you are doing it. This one feature has quietly changed what it means to own an electric vehicle, and most people driving EVs right now have no idea they are sitting on top of something this powerful. We are talking about vehicle-to-home technology, also known as V2H, and if you have never heard of it, you are about to understand why automotive engineers consider it one of the most underrated breakthroughs of the last decade. The concept is simple, but the implications are staggering. Your EV battery, which can store anywhere from 40 to over 100 kilowatt-hours of energy, becomes a mobile power station for your entire home. A typical American household uses roughly 30 kilowatt-hours per day, which means a fully charged long-range EV could power your home for 3 days straight without touching the grid. Think about that for a second. And what makes this even more interesting is how the technology quietly evolved from something only engineers cared about into a feature some automakers are now using as a headline selling point. If you are finding this as mind-blowing as we did when we first researched it, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, and drop a comment below telling us if you knew this feature existed before today, because the answers are always surprising. The story of V2H actually starts much earlier than most people realize, and it begins not in Silicon Valley but in Japan, a country that learned a brutal lesson about energy dependence after the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. When the Fukushima disaster knocked out power to millions of homes, Nissan engineers were already deep in development of what would become one of the most quietly revolutionary features in automotive history. The Nissan Leaf, which launched in 2010 and became the world's best-selling electric vehicle for years, was the first mass-market car to receive a bidirectional charging system in Japan through a program called Leaf to Home, launched in 2012. Early adopters in Japan reported powering their homes through rolling blackouts while their neighbors sat in the dark, and those stories spread through online communities like wildfire. But here is where things get technically fascinating. Bidirectional charging requires an inverter capable of converting the battery's DC power back into AC power that household appliances can use, and for years, most automakers simply refused to invest in that added hardware cost. The Ford F-150 Lightning changed the conversation in North America when it launched with up to 9.6 kilowatts of home backup power through its intelligent backup power system, enough to run a typical home for 3 days on a full charge. Most drivers never realize that number is not just a spec on a brochure sheet but a genuine lifeline during a power outage. Now here is the part that separates the truly informed EV owners from everyone else, and it involves the way automakers have positioned this technology very differently depending on the market. In Japan, Mitsubishi launched the Outlander PHEV with V2H capability back in 2013, and surveys of Japanese owners showed that a significant portion had actually used their vehicle to power their home at least once, not in an emergency, but as a routine part of managing their electricity costs. Meanwhile, in the United States and Europe, the conversation shifted toward a slightly different but equally powerful version of the idea called vehicle-to-grid, or V2G, where your car feeds energy back not just to your home but to the wider electrical grid, and utility companies actually pay you for it. The Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Genesis GV60, and the Kia EV6 all launched with V2G capability built into their architecture through their 800-volt platform, a technical achievement that also gives them some of the fastest charging speeds of any EV ever made. But there is one detail almost nobody talks about when comparing these cars. The Ioniq 5 can also function as a generator, with enough power output to run a small film production, a campsite, or a food truck through its vehicle-to-load feature. If this is already blowing your mind and you know someone who is thinking about going electric, share this video with them right now. Subscribe if you have not already, leave a comment about which feature surprised you most, and let someone who loves cars know this is the kind of content that actually teaches you something real. What makes the engineering behind all of this so impressive is not just the concept but the precision required to make it safe and reliable at scale. The battery packs in modern EVs are not simple blocks of stored energy. They are sophisticated thermal systems with liquid cooling circuits, battery management software running thousands of calculations per second, and cell chemistries designed to survive hundreds or even thousands of charge cycles without significant degradation. Tesla's lithium iron phosphate cells used in standard range models, for example, are rated for significantly longer cycle lives than the nickel manganese cobalt chemistry used in many competitors, which matters enormously when you are using the car battery as a daily energy buffer for your home. And this is where things get interesting, because the actual lifespan impact of using V2H functionality has been studied more carefully than most people know. Nissan's own data from Leaf to home users in Japan showed that moderate bidirectional use did not meaningfully accelerate battery degradation when the system was managed correctly by the onboard software. The software itself is doing most of the heavy lifting, deciding when to charge, when to discharge, at what rate, and how to protect the cells from thermal stress, all invisibly, all automatically. Engineers refer to this as smart energy management, and it is essentially an artificial intelligence layer sitting between your home, the grid, and your car that most owners never interact with directly. Beyond the home energy angle, the practical uses of high-output EV power have opened up entirely new ownership experiences that traditional car culture never anticipated. Professional photographers and filmmakers working on remote locations have documented using the Ford F-150 Lightning to power camera rigs, lighting setups, and editing workstations without a generator in sight. Off-grid adventurers have used the Rivian R1T, which features a geared tunnel outlet and a camp kitchen outlet capable of delivering real power, to run coffee makers, induction cooktops, and electric heaters in locations without a single utility pole visible for miles. The GMC Hummer EV Edition 1, with its massive 212 kWh battery, carries enough stored energy to power an average American home for roughly a week, a number that sounds almost fictional until you do the math. But there is a fascinating psychological dimension to this ownership experience that automotive researchers have begun documenting. EV owners with bidirectional capability report significantly higher satisfaction scores than those without it, not always because they use the feature constantly, but because the knowledge that they could power their home in an emergency creates a sense of resilience and control that traditional car ownership never offered. It is the same reason people buy backup generators they might use twice a year. The peace of mind has its own measurable value, and automakers are increasingly aware that this emotional dimension of ownership may be just as important as range numbers and 0 to 60 times in convincing the next wave of buyers to make the switch. Looking ahead, the trajectory of this technology points toward something that sounds more like a science fiction energy network than a simple car feature. California's grid operator CAISO has already begun pilot programs where EV fleets act as distributed energy storage assets, smoothing out the peaks and valleys of solar and wind generation across the state. Volkswagen, through its MEB platform, has been developing V2G capability for its ID series vehicles with the stated goal of making every car sold a potential grid asset. Researchers at the University of California, Davis calculated that if just 25% of American passenger vehicles were EVs with bidirectional capability, they could collectively store more energy than all of the grid-scale battery installations in the United States combined. That is not a distant utopian projection. That is current mathematics applied to near-term adoption trends. The cars being sold right now are the foundation of that future, and the buyers who understood this early are already experiencing a version of it every time they wake up to a full battery charged on cheap overnight electricity and a lower utility bill. The feature that feels almost illegal, the ability to make your car work for your house instead of the other way around, is not a gimmick or a marketing line. It is a genuine structural shift in the relationship between transportation and energy, and it is happening faster than almost anyone predicted. If you learned something new today that changed how you think about electric vehicles, subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who needs to see it, hit the like button, and tell us in the comments what moment in this video hit you the hardest, because the EV revolution is not just about how you drive anymore. It is about how you live.